Oh God, every time I watch a BBC broadcast on Gaza genocide, and I think they can't possibly stoop any lower. But folks working with my former employer prove me wrong on every single occasion. In the latest episode, which is so shameful, and I will let you watch the clip in a bit, a BBC presenter takes objection to the use of word genocide by a Palestinian guest during the interview. And she doesn't stop here. First of all, an organization funded by your money and my money, called the license fee, is not even pretending anymore. They're openly batting for Israel and functioning as a spokespersons of the Israeli government. Just notice how she objects to the word genocide and then expresses her displeasure by ordering her guests to move on and not talk about genocide anymore. If you invite somebody to interview, who are you to express your displeasure, to say, okay, move on? Either you have time to interview her or you don't have time to interview her. If you have time to interview her and she is the one affected by the current genocide, you must let her speak. You cannot function as an extension of Israeli government. You are the world's independent media. At least that's the impression that you give to everybody in the world. Now, this presenter then has the audacity to say she wasn't devaluing Palestinian lives, because she then realizes that her action is gonna earn her plenty of condemnation around the world. Watch this segment first.
But we have heard some Israeli politicians being vocal in their opposition to what's going on. How unusual is it to hear that sort of criticism?
So you have these Israeli policymakers essentially enforcing a genocide just a couple of dozen kilometers west of the West Bank, and at the same time saying, oh, this is abhorrent, or we condemn this act. And again, you need to remember that these settlers are part of the Israeli system, that the Israeli government has placed them illegally in the West Bank as part of the annexation. Now, the condemnation from Israeli policymakers comes from the strategy within the Israeli military, and that is called perception shaping. And it is a policy that they enforce in order to maintain a image of being a moral army, or being a regime that values human life and values legal regulation.
I just must go back to a word that you used a moment ago. It is a fact that many international members of the international community regard these settlements as illegal, but you just used the word genocide. Is that in relation to what's happening in the West Bank? Are you really using that word?
So I'm speaking about the genocide that is happening in Gaza. Now, what is happening in Palestine, and you need to remember, Gaza is not a separate entity from Palestine, which seems to be the trend in media. Israel is enforcing spatiocide, and that includes the annexation of territory and the depopulation of villages. In the West Bank, we have witnessed an unprecedented rate of Israeli settler annexation of Palestinian lands and actual depopulation of towns and areas within the West Bank. So that does fall within the overall Israeli strategy of ethnic cleansing. And if that word makes you uncomfortable, I recommend that you go and actually see what ethnic cleansing means, because Israel has de facto implemented every part of what that phrase entails.
Well, of course,
so yes, I do place it in that same category.
Well, of course, Israel would deny that completely, and even members
Absolutely.
of the international community would challenge some of what you've just said. What is the mood? What is the anticipation, though, in the West Bank of what might happen next, and how is the temperature lowered? Just briefly, if you would.
Of course, Israel would refute that, and parts of the international community. Like I said, this is part of Israel's perception shaping strategy.
Can we move on to the question?
The question.
Sorry, Mariam, my question is, what's the anticipation in the West Bank of what might happen next, and what needs to happen to bring the temperature down?
Right. So the anticipation in the West Bank is part of how you just responded to me. So Palestinians are expecting especially international media correspondents, to devalue what is happening here and semi-legitimize it.
I didn't do that at all. I'm sorry, Mariam Marguerite, I did not do that at all. I did not do that at all. I'm asking you to tell me what the anticipation is. I'm asking you to tell me what the mood is and the anticipation is of Palestinians in the West Bank. That isn't devaluing anything that has happened at all. And we have just reported that the British Foreign Secretary has condemned the settler violence. Please answer my question.
As I said, perception shaping. You can go back to this interview and see how you devalued it. As in, for what is the situation in the West Bank, Palestinians are frightened.
Now you tell me, didn't she realize that this was live and her action will be shared on social media and millions will make independent assessment of her questionable conduct? There's no point saying that I didn't devalue. Now it has gone viral. Millions of people who have no affiliation with either the BBC or Israel can make independent assessment. Now can someone tell me why people should not question BBC's journalism? Which part of the BBC's editorial guidelines book can justify this kind of interview? What's happening in the occupied West Bank is with the full support of the Israeli army. That's for everybody to see. Palestinian houses are set on fire. They are thrown out of their houses where they have lived for generations. They can't even retaliate because Israeli terrorists, also known as the IDF, are protecting armed settlers with lethal weapons. And then the settler terrorists, they don't stop here. They're setting hundreds of acres of Palestinian land where they were growing olive trees on fire to hurt them financially. And the clowns in the White House, the State Department and the 10 Downing Street would either remain silent or say their actions are inconsistent with international laws. Inconsistent, no big deal. And when a Palestinian raises this issue on a media outlet supposed to be impartial, a presenter like this woman simply cannot stand. I mean, you don't have to be a journalist to showcase a better conduct than this. You simply stop being a horrible human being. We expect better from an organization which is funded by our hard-earned money, our hard-earned £169 every year. That's a lot of money. Salute to Mariam Barghouti for keeping her sanity intact even in the face of this extreme and shameless provocation from the BBC presenter. That's it from me. I'm grateful for all of you for your support on buymecoffee.com. If you think my journalism is worth supporting, then you should consider buying me a coffee too. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism.